Hello there, survivors and friends, and welcome to episode 10 of
Concept Limbo.
the place where ideas come not so much to die, but to have a sit down and a cup of tea whilst they wait their turn on the update ride of destiny. I really can't believe I've managed to rinse so many unused designs out of the rusty back catalogue so far. 10 episodes? Really? And I've still got at least 1, 2, 3, carry the 5. A few more to do anyway. In the previous 2 parts, I've been trying to squeeze every last environmental concept out of the rusty landscape sponge, and now it's time to jump up and down on it once again to release another round of ideas that were suggested for the game's not so great outdoors, but until this point in time have remained unused. For this episode, we need to start by turning our eyes to the skies, because I want to talk about something of which Rust currently has 2, and could potentially have had more. No, not types of fish, I'm talking events. You see, we've had airdrops for pretty much as long as we've had rocks and naked butt cracks, and ever since September of last year, we've been enjoying random visits from ninja attack helicopters. With this in mind, however, I'd like you to join me in the cockpit now as we fly back to community update number 28 from 17th of February 2015 to see exactly how much influence a well-presented suggestion from the player base can exert on an open-minded dev team. It was here that a thread from the Playrust subreddit was highlighted that suggested an expansion to the existing airdrop system, and that, as you'll see, probably led to much more. This was the infographic that Redditor and Rust fan Smyek whipped up to explain what he thought could add spice to the proceedings, and with it detailed 4 quite different types of event. Starting from the left, we have the bog standard airdrop, reliable and all-round rather satisfying to get your hands on, containing random higher tier loot and either happening every so often or being called in with a supply signal. Familiar so far. Next, though, we have an idea for something else that could potentially be jettisoned from supply planes, and that is a dead paratrooper. Presumably they're not alive when they get chucked out of the hatch, and if that is the case, then I'm a little bit confused as to why they'd be given a parachute, and indeed who'd open it for them. I mean, why waste one on a corpse? Just give them a sky burial and have done with it. No need for a soft landing. In fact, a heavy landing would probably help to pre-tenderize the cadaver for any passing wolves and bears. Anyway, this aside, the plan was to be able to cool down one of these type of drops with a walkie-talkie, which again doesn't make a huge amount of sense, but whatever. Smyek thought the bodies, when found, could contain such items as canned food, medicals, firearms, and ammo. Useful bits and bobs which, to be frank, you'd think would have been stripped off of the bodies before they were pushed out of the cargo bay. But there I go, nitpicking again. Rust isn't supposed to be super realistic, is it? Or is it? No, it's not. Probably the most intriguing idea to come out of all of this, though, is the next type of drop, or more specifically crash, which is this concept for a fallen satellite. Very shiny and loud, a bit like the Blue Man Group, this present from the heavens would be seen by pretty much everybody and his cat as it came down, and is presumably nuclear-powered, as Smyek suggested it turn the immediate vicinity into a glow-in-the-dark no-go area. Apart from being able to recycle bits of these satellites into metal frags, his other ideas for loot included high-end tools, medical supplies, and more canned food. Not quite sure what tins of beans would be doing on a piece of orbital space communication technology. Sorry, there I go again. The bit that I particularly liked, however, was that as well as being a natural occurrence, it might also be possible to actually make use of the satellite dish monument to force one into crashing once a day, presumably by weeing on the control panel or something. Hold on to that thought, because we'll revisit the idea in just a moment, but before that, let's take a look at the last suggestion in the line, which was the heli crash. I know, we do have this now, but remember, this infographic was drawn up some months before the feature actually flew into the game, and it seems, as far as I can tell, that this post could well have been the inspiration behind our beloved ninja helis. Just look at the description and you'll see. Linear flight like a plane do. Inaccurate machine gunner who shoots players under a helicopter. 80% chance pilot loses control and the heli crashes. Sounds like a right bunch of amateurs if you ask me. Loot would include firearms, ammo and medicals. Rather standard so far, only the last part is different really, and that is the suggestion that this event too could be activated optionally in a rad town with the help of a rusty walkie-talkie. Now, they've been suggested plenty of times for Rust, but I'm not going to debate the merits of walkie-talkies in this episode. If you can't afford TeamSpeak or Discord yet, then you have a problem, as they're basically free. Personally, I think if you want to go down the route of suitably rusty, long-distance in-game communication, then we need such things as smoke signals, war drums, and the good old 2 plastic cups and a length of string. But I digress. Let's rewind and explore that idea of the crashed satellite a little more, and to do so we need to pay a visit to devblog 68 from July of 2015, where the ever-prolific concept artist Megan Tupper suddenly posted some photos of that very thing. She didn't give us many details, as she said not much was being revealed at the time, but what she did say was that she was working on making it look a bit more bashed up. Right now, the idea is a tad too polished for something that's just re-entered Earth's atmosphere and smashed into the ground. True to her word, in the very next devblog, she'd gone at it with a hammer and blowtorch and it was looking suitably pummeled and distressed. Sadly though, this was the very last we ever saw of its beaten form. Megan left the services of Facepunch Industries a short while afterwards, it seems, and the whole thing was consigned to the satellite graveyard. From events that bring goodies crashing from the sky now to a slightly more devastating type of the naturally disastrous variety. How's about waking up to find one of these parked behind your base? A picture speaks 1,000 words, so I'm just going to let it stew for a moment. Okay, so this was a volcano concept from Reddit user Razidek, who it seems wanted to combine Rust Island with the fires of Mordor. Not only that, but he went one step further and suggested a tsunami event as well. Perhaps if both struck at the same time, they would cancel each other out, but either way, you and your base could end up either very damp or very well cooked. This sort of thing isn't just a community idea though. Gary himself hinted at the possibility of disasters hitting Rust Island all the way back in his mind map from the end of 2014, where tornadoes and earthquakes were a definite maybe. But what would be the point? Well, in addition to an event that could add a whole new level of PvE and cause damage to structures, perhaps over a certain size, either server-wide or in possible high-risk, high-reward areas, I imagine this could potentially be a rather neat way to actually crimp everything off and wipe a server clean. Perhaps much like Ark's special extinction event servers that reset once a month after a gigantic meteor strike, Rust could have something similar on selected servers that would provide a definite countdown to the end of the world, maybe with a small chance of surviving post-wipe with your progress intact if you were able to take refuge in an underground facility. But that's just one of my suggestions. Talking of countdowns, and on a similar note, I'd like to show you one more item of concept art that I've collected and filed under E for events, and that is this one for a giant capsule thing that was posted on the Rust Trello boards by Howie at Facepunch as far back as September 2014. Possibly either a very rare airdrop or even something that could spawn with the server like any of the usual landmarks, its contents are a mystery, and the suggestion was that it's either a capsule containing some super amazing loot that would open when the timer reaches 0, or B, the mother of all bombs that would lead to the end of human life in a 1,000-mile radius, and that players could either work to disarm or arm, depending on how they felt about the server. Now, there have been a number of threads on Reddit about this kind of scenario, but the most interesting I've found so far was from August 2015, where a user by the name of xLoud kicked off a discussion on the possibility that instead of a natural disaster, a device like this could be used to create some sort of endgame for Rust servers, and with the potential for players to directly force or delay a wipe. He suggested that maybe players could, with enough rare ingredients and time, actually build one of these bad boys, and the subject once again highlighted the question of whether Rust should be a game based around regular wipes, or whether they should be a rare event. After describing how one clan could be victorious by successfully building and detonating one, killing both themselves and everyone else in the process, he laid out his case for why he thought it was a good idea. The server wipes in a nuclear holocaust and everyone is back to square one. This creates a few unique gameplay elements. It gives an end state that groups can aspire towards or actively fight to prevent. Rare or unique components can create a King of the Hill-like game where the biggest clans fight over the one and only detonator on the server. It would shift the focus away from the new spawns into a different echelon of conflict. Why bother raiding the little guys for metal fragments when you could instead fight clan versus clan over control of uranium ore or other high-level resources? It acts as a game balancer. If one group is too big to fail, then every other smaller clan and individual has a vested interest to delay the inevitable, or even steal the glory for themselves. This could create awesome incentive to team up with strangers or even enemies to battle the common enemy. Winners could go down in Rust history. The one Newman who finally pulls the trigger ending the game could get a unique item in his Steam inventory, forever showing the world that he won. The event could even be memorialised as a monument or future Radtown location. The concept of nuclear war fits with the aesthetic of Rust, with radiation pockets, ruins and whatnot. It introduces an in-game mechanic for wiping the server, wiping blueprints, introducing patches, etc. Now, maybe all of this sounds a tad far-fetched and more than a little nihilistic, but when you think about it, it could actually be a very simple thing to implement. Whatever the case, on a final and possibly related note, in my excavations into Rust's history, I dug up an interview that Gary gave way back at the beginning of 2014, where he made a rather intriguing comment. When asked about the backstory to Rust Island, something that I plan to cover in a future episode, he stated that, "We've got our theories about why this island exists and why these people are there. That is kind of playing to the event thing that we're thinking about too. We don't really want to tell anyone about it just yet though, because if we talk about it before we do it, they'll get angry at us." An event that players might get angry about. Presuming that he wasn't just alluding to the great random fixed gender debacle of 2015, this could possibly be something to do with a server-wide disaster. Or possibly not. What do you think, though? Is the concept of a rusty nuclear holocaust the bomb? Or should it be left to fizzle out? In fact, which, if any of these designs, would you want to see actually made a part of Rust? Leave me a comment down below, please. Slap the like button if you enjoyed this episode and want to see another one. Subscribe to the channel for weekly updates to Rust, podcasts, gameplay, plus much, much more. And come and visit my stables on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and Steam. I shall catch you all soon, but in the meantime, keep calm and stay rusty. Cheerio.